alarm on my wrist does not ring. It vibrates, a gentle, rhythmic pulse against the inside of my arm that pulls me from sleep exactly 3 minutes before 2 in the morning. The room is pitch black and utterly silent. For most of the world, this is the middle of the deep night. But for me, it is the beginning. I slide out of bed, my feet finding the cool hardwood floor. There is no hesitation, no grogginess. My body knows this routine better than it knows how to rest. I move through the dark house by memory, stepping into the bathroom to splash cold water on my face. The shock of the temperature tightens my skin and sharpens my focus. I dress in the dark. The uniform is a tactile checklist of readiness. First, the socks, thick wool to cushion my feet against the concrete floors I will stand on for the next 10 hours. Then the trousers, a houndstooth pattern of heavy cotton, designed to breathe, but withstand the heat of the ovens. I pull on my white undershirt, feeling the cool fabric settle against my back. Finally, the chef's coat. It is starched and stiff. I fasten the double-breasted front, sliding the cloth buttons through their holes one by one. Each button secures a layer of armor. I tie my apron strings around my waist, double knotting them at the front. The tension around my midsection feels supportive, like a hug that says it is time to work. Downstairs, the kitchen is still. I do not turn on the overhead lights. The small blue light of the coffee maker is enough. I prepared it last night. I press the button, and the machine begins its gurgling work, the only sound in the house. While it brews, I lace my shoes. They are heavy, non-slip clogs with reinforced toes. They grip the floor with certainty. I pour the coffee into a travel mug. The steam rises in a silver ribbon against the shadows. I take one sip. It is black, hot, and bitter. It is perfect. I step out the back door, and the night air hits me. It is crisp and carries the scent of damp earth and cooling asphalt. The sky is a deep, bruised purple, moonless and vast. My truck sits in the driveway, a dark silhouette. I unlock the door, the mechanism sounding a solid mechanical thud that echoes briefly in the quiet neighborhood. The drive is a meditation. The streets are empty. I glide through the sleeping suburbs, watching the houses with their dark windows. I am the guardian of the morning, awake so that they can wake up to something warm. The traffic lights change from red to green just for me, casting long, shifting shadows across the dashboard. The tires hum a low, steady drone against the pavement. I do not listen to the radio. I prefer the sound of the engine and the wind rushing past the side mirrors. I reach the industrial district. The bakery is a brick building on a corner, dark and unassuming. I park in my usual spot, the tires crunching softly over loose gravel. I kill the engine, and silence rushes back in to fill the cab. I sit for a moment, finishing the last of my coffee, watching the steam fog up the windshield. I exit the truck and approach the back entrance. The steel door is cold under my fingertips. I select the brass key from my ring, distinguishing it by its square head. It slides into the cylinder with a smooth, oily friction. I turn it, feeling the heavy tumblers fall into place with a series of precise clicks. The bolt retracts. I push the door open. The smell hits me instantly. It is the signature of the bakery, a complex perfume of toasted grain, caramelized sugar, and the faint, sour tang of fermentation. It is the smell of yesterday's work and today's promise. I flip the breaker switch by the door. The overhead fluorescent lights flicker once, twice, then hum to life, bathing the stainless steel work tables in a clean, white glow. The bakery is motionless. The mixers stand like dormant giants. The wooden workbenches are scrubbed pale and dusted with the ghost of flour. I walk to the back, to the heart of the operation, the deck ovens. These massive units take hours to heat, so they are always the first priority. I turn the heavy black dials. I set the top deck to 450 degrees and the bottom deck to 480. I press the ignition switches. There is a spark, a pause, and then the deep, throaty whoosh of gas catching fire. The pilot lights glow blue, and a low, comforting roar begins to emanate from the steel chambers. I check the proofing box. The humidity gauge is steady. The temperature is cool, holding the dough I shaped yesterday in a state of suspended animation. I wash my hands at the sink, the soap lathering thick and white. I scrub up to my elbows, rinsing with hot water until my skin is pink and clean. I dry them on a fresh towel. The room is warming up. The hum of the ovens, the buzz of the lights, and the cycling of the refrigerator compressor create a symphony of industry. I stand at the center of the room, my hands resting on the cool surface of the butcher block table. I take a deep breath, filling my lungs with the scent of yeast and heat. The day has officially begun. I am ready to bake. The massive planetary mixer is the first engine of the morning. It stands in the corner like a heavy iron sentry, painted a chipped battleship gray. I attach the dough hook, a spiraling arm of stainless steel the size of a human forearm. I press the green button, and the machine hums to life with a low, vibrating thrum that I feel in the soles of my work boots. Into the bowl goes the flour, a white cascade falling from the scoop. Then the water, tempered to exactly 76 degrees Fahrenheit. I watch the hook rotate. At first, the mixture is a shaggy, chaotic mess, tearing and clumping. But I do not rush it. I simply watch. This is the part of the job that requires patience. Slowly, rhythmically, the hook catches the mass, slapping it against the side of the stainless steel bowl. Thwack, thwack, thwack. The sound is hypnotic, a steady metronome for the rest of the kitchen. As the gluten develops, the dough transforms. It changes from a rough, dull paste into something satiny and alive. I reach in to perform the window pane test. I pinch a small piece of the dough and gently stretch it between my thumbs and forefingers. It expands, growing thinner and thinner until it is a translucent membrane, letting the light from the overhead bulbs pass through without tearing. It is ready. I stop the machine. The silence that follows is heavy and sweet. Now comes the bench work. This is where the flow state truly takes hold. I hoist the heavy mass of dough out of the bowl and onto the large wooden workbench. The wood is maple, worn smooth by decades of flour and friction. I dust the surface with a flick of my wrist, sending a fine, white mist of flour settling across the grain. My tool of choice is the bench knife. It is a simple rectangle of steel with a wooden handle, but in my hand, it feels like an extension of my own bones. I begin to divide the mass. I cut, I weigh, I adjust. I slice through the dough, placing a portion on the digital scale. 1,000 grams. Perfect. I move to the next. 990 grams. I slice a tiny sliver from the main mass and add it. 1,000 grams. The rhythm takes over. Cut, weigh, slide. Cut, weigh, slide. I do not need to think about the movements. My muscles remember the distance, the weight, the pressure. Next to me, Marco, my sous baker, begins the pre-shape. We work in total silence. There is no need for words when the choreography is this precise. I slide a measured portion of dough to his station. He cups his hand over it, using the friction of the table to tuck the dough under itself, spinning it into a tight, smooth sphere. I watch his hands moving in a blur of efficiency. He places the rounds in neat rows, distinct and uniform soldiers of dough resting under a linen cloth. We are a machine made of flesh and flour. The air in the bakery begins to warm up, smelling faintly of yeast and fermentation, a scent that is sour and comforting all at once. Once the dough has rested, I move to the baguettes. This requires the most delicate touch. I take a resting round and flatten it gently with the heel of my palm, degassing it just enough to even out the bubbles without crushing the structure. I fold the top third down and seal the seam with my thumb. I fold the bottom third up, seal. Then, with flat palms, I roll the cylinder back and forth, extending it outward. My hands start at the center and move toward the tapered ends. The dough feels alive under my skin, cool and elastic. It pushes back slightly, holding its tension. I place the long, pale wand into the canvas folds of the couche. the heavy linen cloth that holds the shape while it rises. One after another. Fold, seal, roll, place. Fold, seal, roll, place. Time becomes irrelevant. The clock on the wall ticks forward, but I measure the morning in trays filled. The repetitive motion quiets the mind. There is no past, no future, only the tactile sensation of flour against fingertips and the satisfying resistance of the dough. Finally, it is time for the oven. I slide the long wooden peel under the loaves. I take the lame, a razor blade curved on a stick. This is the signature. I hold the blade at a shallow 45-degree angle. Slash. I make 5 overlapping cuts down the length of the baguette. The blade parts the skin of the dough smoothly, revealing the interior structure. I load them onto the hot stone deck of the oven. I pull the lever for the steam injection. A violent, rushing hiss fills the room as water hits the superheated metal, enveloping the bread in a cloud of moisture that will create the perfect, shattering crust. I close the heavy door. The heat radiates against my apron. The first batch is in. The flow continues. The high heat of the morning rush has finally broken. The rotary ovens, having done their heavy lifting for the day, stand silent and cooling. The heavy, sweet humidity of baking dough has lifted, replaced by the dry, toasted warmth of finished bread. It is 10 in the morning, but my body knows this as the middle of the day. I wipe my hands on a side towel and untie the strings of my apron. The fabric is stiff with flour and dried dough, holding the map of the morning's labor. I hang it on the hook by the steel prep table, feeling the sudden lightness in my shoulders. It is time to sit. I take my metal lunchbox and my thermos to the small break table in the corner of the dry storage room. It is quieter here, muffled by 50-pound sacks of flour stacked like sandbags against the walls. The air smells different in this room, earthy, raw, and dusty, smelling of wheat fields rather than the bakery. I sit on the wooden stool. I unscrew the cap of the thermos. Steam rises in a thin, lazy ribbon. It is a simple black tea, dark and tannic. I blow on the surface and take a sip. The heat travels down my chest, a grounding warmth that contrasts with the cooling air of the room. My lunch is simple, a sandwich made on a slice of sourdough from yesterday's bake. I unwrap the wax paper. The crust offers a firm resistance as I bite down, followed by the soft, tangy crumb. The rhythm of chewing is slow and deliberate. There is no rush now. The delivery van has already come and gone. The front display case is full. The world outside is awake and rushing toward noon. But in here, time has pooled into a calm, shallow lake. From my seat, I can see through the doorway into the main bakery floor. The racks of bread are lined up like soldiers at ease. I listen closely. In the silence, I can hear the bread singing. It is a faint, crackling sound, like dry leaves stepping on pavement or the distant popping of a campfire. It is the sound of the crusts contracting as they cool, the moisture migrating outward, the structure settling into its final form. It is the most satisfying sound in the world, the audible proof of a job finished. I finish the tea, screwing the cap back onto the thermos with a definitive squeak. I brush the crumbs from the table into my hand and deposit them in the bin. The break is over, but the frantic pace does not return. Now comes the time for maintenance, for care, for preparation. I return to the main bench. It is covered in a fine dusting of flour and small scraps of dough that have dried and hardened. I pick up my bench scraper. It is a simple rectangle of stainless steel with a wooden handle, worn smooth by years of my grip. I place the blade against the wood of the table at a 45-degree angle. I push forward. The metal scrapes against the wood with a rasping shush. I work in long, methodical strips, clearing the surface from left to right. The dried dough curls up and flakes away. I sweep the debris into the trash. I take a damp cloth, fold it into a neat square, and wipe the wood down. The grain of the butcher block deepens in color as it absorbs the moisture, turning a rich, honeyed amber. Now the feeding. I go to the walk-in refrigerator and retrieve the plastic tub housing the starter. This is the heart of the bakery, a culture of wild yeast and bacteria that has been kept alive for 12 years. I set the tub on the scale. I remove the lid. The aroma hits me immediately, sharp, acetic, like green apples and yogurt. I discard all but 200 grams of the culture. It feels wasteful to the uninitiated, but it is necessary for strength. I zero out the digital scale. I pour in 200 grams of tepid water. The stream is clear and steady. I stop exactly when the number hits the target. I take a whisk and break up the stiff starter into the water, creating a milky slurry. Next, the flour, 200 grams of white bread flour, and 50 grams of whole rye for nutrients. I add it to the liquid. I switch to a heavy spatula. I mix. The flour absorbs the water, turning from a dry powder into a shaggy mass, and then into a smooth, thick paste. I mix until there are no dry pockets left. The sound of the spatula slapping against the plastic tub, echoing rhythmically. I scrape down the sides of the tub, ensuring everything is tidy. The starter is fed. It will sit out at room temperature for 4 hours to wake up, to bubble and rise, before being put back to sleep in the cold. I place the lid on loosely, allowing it to breathe. The bakery is clean. The tools are hung. The ingredients are prepped. The cycle is ready to begin again tomorrow. The final timer of the shift chimes, a soft, digital chirp that signals the end of the production cycle. I walk to the deck oven for the last time today. Through the glass, I see the baguettes have achieved a deep, burnished copper color. I grip the handle of the peel, sliding the long wooden paddle under the loaves with a practiced, fluid motion. I pull them out, and the heat washes over me one last time, carrying the scent of toasted wheat and caramelized crust. I transfer the bread to the cooling rack. As the baguettes hit the cool air of the bakery, they begin to sing. It is a faint, crackling sound, the song of the crust contracting as it cools. 1,000 tiny fractures forming on the surface that promise a perfect crunch. I stand there for a moment, just listening to the bread settle. The racks are now full. It is a wall of abundance. Sourdough boule, golden croissants, dark rye loaves, and pastries glazed with apricot jam all sit in neat, military rows. I take a moment to survey the work. 7 hours ago, this was just 50 pounds of flour, a bucket of water, and a jar of starter. Now it is food. It is finished. I turn my back on the cooling racks and face the workstation. The cleanup is not a chore. It is the closing ceremony of the shift. I pick up my bench scraper, the metal extension of my hand. I run the blade across the wooden butcher block table at a 45-degree angle. It gathers the dusting flour and bits of dried dough into a neat pile. I sweep the debris away, leaving the wood smooth and pale. Next comes the hot, soapy water. I dip a thick sponge into the bucket and wring it out until it is just damp. I wipe down the stainless steel surfaces. Long, broad strokes, left to right, top to bottom. The steel gleams under the fluorescent lights, reflecting the clean kitchen back at me. I wipe the mixer, tracing the curve of the heavy iron stand, removing a smudge of flour from the speed dial. I polish the knobs of the oven. I gather my tools, the lame, the scraper, the thermometer, and the shears. I wash them, dry them, and place them back in their leather roll. I tie the leather strap, securing the bundle. Everything is exactly where it belongs, ready for the baker who will come in tomorrow morning to start the cycle all over again. I untie my apron. It is heavy with the day's work, stiff with flour and spotted with butter. As I pull the loop over my head, I feel my shoulders drop an inch. The physical weight of the job is removed. I hang the apron on its hook in the locker room and sit on the wooden bench to change my shoes. I unlace my heavy, non-slip work boots and slide my feet into soft sneakers. The sensation of lightness is immediate. I step out the back door and into the alley. The shock of the daylight is always a surprise. When I arrived, the world was pitch black and silent. Now the sun is high and bright. The air is warmer, filled with the sounds of the city fully awake. Cars hum in the distance, and I can hear the murmur of customers lining up at the front of the shop, eager to buy the bread I just pulled from the oven. I walk to my car, my movements slow and leisurely. I do not rush. I have been rushing for 8 hours, moving with precision and speed. Now I have nowhere to be but home. The drive is short. I keep the radio off. I prefer the hum of the engine and the wind against the glass. My hands rest lightly on the steering wheel, noticing the absence of the dough's resistance. When I arrive home, the house is quiet. I draw the blackout curtains in the bedroom, transforming the bright midday sun into a soft twilight gloom. The room is cool. I shower, scrubbing the scent of yeast and flour from my skin, watching the water swirl down the drain. I put on fresh, loose cotton clothes and climb into bed. My body is tired, a heavy, pleasant exhaustion that settles deep in my muscles. It is the good kind of tired. It is the feeling of having used my hands to create something tangible. I pull the duvet up to my chin. The sheets are cool and crisp. I close my eyes. In the darkness behind my eyelids, I see the rhythmic folding of dough. I hear the hum of the mixer. I smell the sweet, earthy scent of fermentation. My breathing slows, matching the long, slow rise of the bread. The world outside continues to spin, busy and loud, but my day is done. The work is finished. I let go of the tension in my jaw. I relax my hands, and I drift into a deep, dreamless sleep.